traffic projections were done initially by the proponents. They employed consultants to do this. They based it on a historical records, and from memory, the traffic growth on the Sydney Harbour Bridge from the order of 1965 to about 1975 was about 3%. Then that falls off somewhat from there on to about 2%. The figures that the consultants came up with was for a traffic increase of about 1.5%. Our people reviewed this. We slightly lowered what their projections were, and at the moment the traffic projections that we're looking at now is approximately compounding of the order of 1.2%.
The traffic projections were undertaken by the Roads and Traffic Authority based on data that was very, very old indeed. In fact, a lot of the data they use is something like 10 years old. And they update with some most unusual assumptions on things like the growth of traffic, the assumptions on how operating costs are increasing through time, how public transport fares are changing through time. These are all very important parameters. However, if one looks at the land use strategies and the growth of jobs and so on, they're not taking place in locations where this traffic's claimed to be going to. In fact, in the eastern suburbs, for example, job opportunities are declining quite substantially. Where the growth is occurring is in directions that would not benefit someone who uses a tunnel.
Our recent experience with our actual traffic as compared with our projections has not been very good. There has been less cross-harbour traffic, particularly in the direction that was paying tolls, than what we had projected. And the reason for this, I think, is twofold. One is that the resistance to paying a higher toll may have been higher than we expected. But I think more importantly is the general economic conditions, the price of petrol, the difficult times that we're experiencing at the moment.
But remember also, their long-term forecast, we're into the third year of tunnel construction, and these are predicated on close to a 35-year run. So over the longer term, some of those swings and bumps will quite probably even out.
I think those projections were used because they supported the need for a tunnel. I think the idea of a tunnel really was pushed from the private sector, and I think the government were persuaded that maybe this was something that would be a good idea, something that they ought to take up, and there's a certain glamour.
The overall benefit cost ratios that were looked at for the Sydney Harbour Tunnel, in the EIS, from memory, I think the joint venture came up with a figure of 1.2. That was questioned, criticised by the director of the DEP. They came in with figures, which I've read through recently, of about 0.78. We carried out quite extensive benefit cost ratios ourselves, and the sensitivity analysis that we did brought in figures between 1 and 1.5.
When the cost-benefit analysis didn't produce a benefit that was high enough, one of the variables, a key variable in that equation was actually doubled in its value. And that way the DMR managed to get a cost-benefit analysis that looked respectable even if it left a lot to be desired.
Since something like 60 to 70% of time savings, or should I say something like 60 to 70% of the benefits of road investments are time savings, if you double your value of travel time saving, you can have a major impact on the net benefit, the outcome that is. Now, my figures were only suggestions, but at the time, Laurie Brereton, who was the Minister for Roads, when he heard that my new values, would actually double time savings benefits, it was suggested they use them. And consequently, we noted a 70% increase in the net benefits.
The cost-benefit ratio we achieved, is it too low? I don't believe so, particularly taking into account the fact that this is not a project which is making a drain on the global borrowing facility of the state finance.
Well, our findings for the review committee was that the initial marine biological work done did have some failings. Indeed, they failed to in fact describe the environment, which is one of the requirements for environmental impact statements, and we thought that was not really adequate.